Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's show is the long-awaited return of our good friend, Mr. Edward Ed Smith, and his incredible series. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag Team Fear and DMT's Cryptid crew. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled The Disappearances of the Deep Fork River Bottoms. Episode 5, Devil in the Rock. Let's get straight into that. Hey Slippy, what's up? This just come out of the slurry. What do you make of that? Oh, I don't know. Is he part of the drill bit? Nope, don't think so. I seen busted drill bits before and he don't look like one. Hang on, let me call Mace. After about 20 minutes, Mace came down to the mudroom. What do you got? Slippery hole? I mean, Slippy? Well, Melonhead, this came up out of the slurry, about 38 feet into the bedrock. What is it? I don't know. It's definitely not from the drill bit. Let's get it in front of Neil. Go ahead and send it up to him. Now, are you going to be ready for me tonight, sweetie? Sure, babe. Whatever you want. Mace leaves the party and goes up to referee yet another argument between his deckhands. Slippy hands the piece of metal to Jack, the youngest of the pit watchers, and tells him to get this up to the geologist's lab and don't stop to scratch anything. Jack knocks on the lab door and Neil answers the door. Jack hands him the object and a paper that Slippy sent up with it. Jack leaves, and as he's returning to the mudroom, he glances out across the boulder and rock outcroppings area to the south. And just for a moment, he thought he'd seen a man standing on top of one of the boulders. The person was just at the edge of the floodlights and was more in shadow. It was tall and thin, but had a thicker chest, and the arms were long, the fingers almost to its knees. The head was what really looked weird to Jack. It seemed to be too long, not very wide, like a normal head of a person. Jack stopped and stared at the figure, and it seemed to be looking back at him. And when he realized that there were several of the figures standing on the boulders in the area, his radio crackled, and it was Slippy. Where the hell are you, bonehead? He grabbed his radio and said he was on his way back when he noticed the figures, but they were gone. He chalked it up to the local hillbillies, just wondering what they were doing. Back in the geologist's lab, Neil begins to take a look at the delivery from the mudroom. He removes it from the plastic sealed baggie with a control number and collection data. It appears to be a metal rod about 6 inches in length, and the shaft of the rod is cylindrical and about 1.5 inches in diameter. The metal on the outer surface of the rod is worn and slightly brazed. However, it looks like it was not worn or scratched recently, like from the actions of a drill bit, but almost with age. The internal surface of each end was like it was cut with a press cutter yesterday, which could be from the teeth rotators on the bit. The other unique thing about the internal surface is that it looked like it was press rolled and had rings like a tree, but it was like a polished metal. Neil set about loading a scrapping into the metal analyzer. He waited for the results, and what he'd seen on the screen amazed him and shocked his logical mind. Titanium has an atomic number of 22. While it's silver in color, has a low density and a high strength. It has an atomic mass of 47.867 U or deuterium. The electron configuration, internal electron shells are normally stable. In the valence, electrons allow for the sharing of 4 electrons. However, with this sample of metal, it is definitely titanium, but the atomic weight is way off the norm. It's 59.888 U or deuterium. The electron configuration is completely stable, with the ability of any titanium atom to bond with any other atom has been extremely limited with such a low valence count. When Neil started searching for manufacturers that would require, or foundries that were capable of manufacturing this kind of titanium were queried, no results were found. He went against Janet's order and contacted Lance and sent him his data and asked for his opinion. Neil sat back and waited and wondered what he had in his lab. The drill shack was alive with activity as they were about to break through the 100-foot level. The downward tube was a long process when you're dealing with bedrock and drilling bits that cost more than $135,000 a piece. When the drill depth read 102 feet, Mace called Janet and informed her of the accomplishment and of the metal fragment find that was sent to Neil. The next 12 hours passed normally, with no anomalies, and the drill depth was at 355 feet and still chewing away. When Slippy was called over to Pump 6's screed, and the pit watcher pulled several fossilized bones from the screed grid. He collected all 33 and put them in a plastic bag and labelled them with the appropriate data and information about their collection. Slippy again asked Jack to take them up to the geology lab and contact Rice Davis, the company archaeologist, so they could make a determination on them. Jack delivered the fossil samples and asked Neil if he would contact Rice Davis about the finds. Neil said that he would handle that and thanked Jack for the delivery. And then Jack asked, "When I left here last night, I saw some people standing over the border area. They must have been hillbillies because they looked a little strange and a little out of place. Have you noticed any strange people hanging around?" "No, I haven't. They found the missing zipper? Jesse, I believe is his name." "Nah, he's gone. And the scuttlebutt is that the locals, meaning the hillbillies, might have grabbed him." "Why would they do that?" "Well, sometimes the locals get pissed off that we're in the neighborhood and causing noise and tearing up the place. They're just disturbing the peace." "That's kind of creepy." "Yeah, but the bad part is sometimes they do it because they want to get their kicks with someone other than themselves, if you know what I mean. Either way, when they find Jesse, and they will, he's going to need some therapy." "So I guess the rule of thumb is don't go walking around by yourself." "Kinda. You see, I grew up not too far from here, and my mum and dad, they wouldn't let me or my brothers go out into these bottoms without our guns and at least 2 or more of us boys being with each other. Even when we were into our 20s, this place, it's beautiful. Got a lot of good hunting and fishing, but it's dangerous as fuck out here. And the river is just as dangerous. People always come up dead or missing, with their boats found just floating down the river, empty, and sometimes there's blood found in them. I mean, it's like a pig got slaughtered in it." "Well, why hasn't the authorities done anything?" "Well, because they're just afraid. As the folks that live down here, you know, the game wardens, they play dumb, but they spend just as much time in this place as the people who live here. And they know what it's like in these bottoms, just like everybody else from here. Hey man, I have to get back or my boss will have my ass." And Jack turned and walked out the door, and just before he closed it, Jack said, "Hey bud, I'll be a little careful if you have to get off the platform deck. I've been watching my back when I have to go down and check the feeder or expel the lines to and from the mud tanks and or to the pit. It's just something hanging around here. It's just not right. It feels wrong." Jack gives him the thumbs up and then closes the door. Neil turns to the plastic bag on the table, opens it, and begins to sort the contents. As the conversation with Jack rolls over in his head, he convinces himself that it's just the local superstitions at play. Neil looks at the sample fossils and they look human or near human. But to have human or proto-human fossils discovered in this stratum of rock, it's unheard of because, well, that would make these fossil samples more than 4 billion years old. Talk about out of place in time. Neil shook his head and set about trying to find a logical explanation for the fossil samples. But this came up from a rock stratum that has been accepted and dated at 4 billion years old. proto-humans at this epoch just did not exist. But yet here are the fossils. He photographed the fossil samples and then 3D scanned several and sent the data off to Rice Davis. And within 20 minutes, he was talking to Rice. Are you fucking serious? Yeah, Rice. I have all the data to back it up. You need to be incredibly careful about your wording, because this site could be reclassified by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. A World Heritage Site, and if that shit happens, we just spent a lot of money on nothing, with no hope of recovery. Now, having said that, are you absolutely sure that these came from the rock strata that has been generally accepted to be at the age you have ridden? Yes, sir. The drill mud has been producing strata fragments at every level of penetration. We are definitely in the strata that is dated and accepted. Okay, but those fossils, they cannot be from the dated strata. Well, where would they come from? Recheck your data and write them out of the record. Neil, do it. No, you're gonna have to give me a lot better explanation than just do it. Okay, try this on for size. That strata contains fossilized bones from A here to an undiscovered branch of the human tree, which means 5 million years or better. However, if they are from the strata you say they came from, then sometime in a far, far distant past, a human-like creature walked this primordial crust of this planet before humans were ever thought of ever existing at 4.2 billion years. Do you see the problem? Well, thanks for the lessons on Evolution 101, but the facts, they're facts. Those fossil samples came up out of the drill mud slurry from the stratum of rock dated to 4.2 billion years old. If they were found in the dirt from the same strata, they will be accepted as well. So, why don't you send me what you want me to write, and I'll tear right through it in my nightly reading. Neil abruptly hangs up, then sends the fossil sample data containing the pictures, strata depth, and 3D scans to his friend Lance, and asks him to get further opinion from others, and then hits send. The drill bit continues to chew its way downward, and other fossils emerge from the slurry and are sent on to Neil. Now down to 588 feet, the drill bit begins to strain, and the motor rotation RPMs begin to slow. The drill bit is showing signs of dulling, and Mace orders the drill shack to drill to 600 feet and then trip pipe to change the drill bit. Mace calls Janet to inform her of the operation status of the rig. The driller informs Mace that they have hit 600 feet, and the crew begin tripping out the 1932-foot sections of drill pipe. Then they can effect the change of the drill bit, which should take about an hour and a half to have it topside before the pipe could be lowered back into the hole. When the drill bit emerges from the hole, it looked like it was grinding against metal. It almost looked melted. Mace and Hank, the driller, as well as several other deckhands, look on the drill bit with shock that it would have such wear, and the type of wear for dealing with rock strata. Mace calls Slippy and asks, do you have any metal fragments in the screed for the last 100 feet? Hang on. Nope, not visible. Pour some mud from the last 50 feet and get it over to the lab and have them put a microscope on it. Look for notes and any other microscopic traces. Will do, boss. Hey, pump number 2 is acting up. Isn't that one of the pumps you had to replace on route to the site? Yes, goddammit. Yeah, it's not holding compression. Go ahead and call Will and have him get the other standby pump moving this way. Alrighty, will do. God damn it, Hank. This rig is gonna be the death of me. Well, Mace, it'll probably get us all eventually. Lee Preston, the site security chief, walked up to Mace and Hank and looked at the drill bit and said, looks like you're drilling into some hot property. Yep. Well, what brings you up here to the top of the mountain? Well, I just got an update from the county sheriff's office on the missing employee. They couldn't find hide nor hair of him. Any idea? Some of the guys who live around here are saying that the locals may have had something to do with it, but it's just talk. Well, the sheriffs have talked to several local people, but they have nothing. It's like the ground just opened up and swallowed him. Well, Mace, keep your people close in and don't let anyone get off the drilling deck platform without having a buddy with them. Ha ha ha. So, I'm gonna have roughnecks babysitting roughnecks. Oh, this is gonna be good. I can just hear it now. I'm serious, Mace. Until we know what happened to Jesse, we're gonna play it safe. This could already be a lawsuit against the company. Okay. I'll institute the babysitter roughneck policy immediately. Well, Hank, you better pick out your buddy real careful like, because the two of you gonna be sleeping cozy with each other. Nut to butt. Ha ha ha. As long as my nuts are to the butt, I'm a driller. I can hang. Hank, you never fail me. The drilling crew changes out the drill bit and begin to trail the pipe back into the hole. Almost 2 hours go by and they are back to the downward tube. Mud is flowing, but the drill speed has been reduced because they are down one mud pump from the time being. The drill bit passes 702 feet and the resistance to the bit gives way to practically no resistance at all. And Hank exclaims, "Holy fuck, what the hell?" As the RPMs jump wildly, the mud return gauges drop to 0 and the mud pressure in the pipe fell too, almost non-present. "Pull back on the rotor, slow this bad puppy down and shut the mud pumps down. We're pumping against no resistance." "Damn, this thing is jumping all over the place, boss. It's like we're in a void or... hell, the pipe is cavitating against the hole. Jesus H." "What happened?" "Resistance dropped to basically 0 and the rotor went free almost." "What? Did we drill into a void?" "It seems like it." "But a void at 700 plus feet in a rock strata? Man, this makes no sense. Okay, let me get a hold of Janet." Mace then picks up the phone to call her skid office, and he hits the speakerphone button. "Hey, what's up?" "Well, boss lady, it seems that we have drilled into a void." "A void?" "Yep." "I'll be right there." And she hangs up the phone. "Here she comes to save the day." Mace just looks at Hank and shakes his head. 15 minutes later, Janet walks into the drill shack. "Okay, knuckle draggers, what are our options?" "We could drop one more pipe in the hole and see if we hit something that we could start drilling again, or we could trip the pipe out and send down a camera." "Sounds like a management decision." "Trip the pipe, send down the camera, let me know when you're ready. I want to be here when you send in the camera," she says as she leaves the shack. "All right, you heard the boss lady. Trip the pipe and get the camera team assembled." The deck crew swings into action with its highly skilled, choreographed dance with steel chains and hydraulic power and muscle. Stand in the wrong place at the wrong time and you will find yourself in a world of hurt, assuming you survive the mistake you make. The drill pipe leaves the hole and is pulled vertically until the thread seam becomes exposed. The deck rotor clamps lock in, and then the chainman wraps the chain around the pipe, about to be unscrewed from the down pipe. And then the top rotor clamps down and unscrews the 32-foot stick of pipe as the chainman guides the pipe. And that is then lifted and transported by crane into the vertical pipe racks. The sound is thunderous, and the mechanical maelstrom of the noise is deafening. The grinding of the motors and torque transfer cases makes the industrial symphony complete. As the last of the drill pipe is removed from the hole and the drill bit is exposed, the first glimpse down into the hole is seen, and the 12 feet of concrete collar holds back the loose soil all the way down to the rock strata, where it becomes the bore hole. The hole seems dark, but it still seems to have some kind of iridescent glow way down towards the bottom of the bore, and the smell was like that of a rotten meat or sewage. The rig crew was reacting to the odour as if one of them had bad gas. And then a mist seemed to rise from the hole, as the air that was rushing to the surface was condensing the moisture from the air. The crew had never seen anything like this, and some of them were actually frightened, because they thought they'd hit a gas pocket, but the volatile gas monitors, or they were silent, and it was just simply puzzling that this was even happening. So, whatever is down in that 32-inch diameter, 702-foot hole, it's unknown. The camera crew begins to assemble the camera and lower in the cradle. as well as positioning the winch that will actually do the lowering of the camera assembly. Hey boss lady. I wish you would stop calling me that. You know, Janet, that's not going to happen because it's going to keep coming back like a rash I have on the left side of my nutsack. You know, if you weren't so good at your job, your ass would have been canned a long time ago, mister. I know, but the boss lady, she can't resist a good tall pusher who knows how to push his tool. And Janet just totally exasperated with Mace at this point. Can we just get on with this? Well, I thought we would have some dinner, maybe. Well, maybe some wine before, but if you want to get right to it, sure, lady. Mace replies with a smirk on his face. As Janet is beside herself, just shaking her head and mouthing unknown words. And Mace is walking off towards the drill shack door, and Janet follows. Goddamn roughnecks! As Mace opens the door to the drill shack, he turns and reacts to Janet. Language. Now, is that in any way for a lady to act? And she walks right past Mace and sits down in the center chair. The camera crew is making the final preps for the camera to be lowered and is patching in the video feed into the drill shack. The lead camera operator calls over the intercom that they are ready to lower the camera and are set to record. Well, what do you say, Janet? You ready to go deep with me? Just put the damn camera in the hole. Wait a minute, no! As Janet was looking at Mace pointing her finger while Mace was biting his lip. Go ahead, Terry. Put us in, Mace says as he looks back to Janet, who is red as a fire truck, and he continues to laugh to himself. The monitors begin to show the concrete collar and then the board surface of the rock strata, and at about 140 feet down, the camera begins to pick up what actually looks like a light at the proverbial end of the tunnel. There seems to be a glow from a light source off to the side of the borehole's opening. The drill shack was quiet, and that almost never happens. All the personnel were literally amazed and stumped as to what could be at the end of the borehole. Even the deckhands were watching on the large monitors in the electrical control room module. At 308 feet down, as the opening of the borehole at the bottom became more distinct and defined, all the crew and drill shack members were glued to the video feeds. The light seemed to become brighter, and then the unthinkable happened. A shadow moved from left to right, and for a while it stopped and could have very well looked up. Did you just fucking see that? Holy shit! Did I just see what I thought I saw? Run the recording feedback. As the drill shack erupted into disbelief and the chaos spread to the rig crew, the level of anxiety began to filter into the support areas on the site, and fear began to grip a large portion of the drill site personnel. Quiet! Mace shouted. After a few moments, the video on one of the monitors seemed to skip backwards, and as it played again, the shadow moved from left to right, and it suddenly did look up, and you could almost discern an arm swinging. There is no way that can happen. I don't damn well believe it. What's the depth of the camera? 392 feet. What'd you think, Janet? I don't know. I just don't know. Stop the descent. What's that depth now? 401 feet. All right. We're a football field away, Janet. I want to talk to you in private. And Janet looked at Mace, and Mace had a serious look that Janet had never seen before. Let's go. Everyone hold your positions. You're on standby, Hank said. Janet and Mace walked over to the drill shack office and both go in through the door. What the hell have you got me and my crew into? I don't know what you're talking about. This was never about fucking oil or gas, was it? Look, Mace, I really don't know what you're talking about. I'm just as shocked as you are. Well, here's the deal. At dawn, I'm pulling my crew off this fucking rig. I don't care if I work again. What I just saw in that hole, I don't fucking believe it. Well, that makes two of us. Mace, I don't really know what you're talking about. Then you need to do some digging and find out. Otherwise, by dawn, we are leaving. With or without you. The safety of my crew is the priority. Mace moves with a purpose and leaves the office, followed by Janet. Then Mace grabs his radio and calls code black, everyone to the crew room, immediately. The rig crew from all parts of the rig platform move with speed and purpose to the crew ready room. Janet, you do what you want. I'm getting my crew ready to bounce out of here. As about 5 members of the drilling crew get up from their positions and walk out with Mace. Mace says as about 5 members of the drilling crew get up from their positions and walk out with Mace. Alright, let's lower the camera. As the camera team begins to lower the camera once more, the camera passes 600 feet. The team notices the light at the end of the borehole flicker and go out. The tech clicks a button on the console, and the 4 bright LED lights snap on, and the opening to the borehole is lit up. As the camera passes 650 feet, and the tech activates the high-resolution color camera. At the 685-foot marker, and then from the right, a leathery, grey scaly face with reddish-orange tinted eyes, of some kind of figure snaps into view. The figure bearing jagged, sharp teeth and then snaps back out of view quickly, and the remaining members in the drill shack jump and scream with surprise, shock, and fear of the images they just witnessed ripping across the control center monitors. While the camera continues to descend, and at 702 feet passes into a void of space. The space was comprised of what seemed to be rock-honed walls and was most definitely constructed by some manner of technology. The room seemed to be one of some size, like maybe 100 or 200 feet along one wall, as the camera panned its 360-degree track. The room contained boxes, or what looked like boxes, made of some kind of material that was undiscernible. The ceiling looked to be 30 feet in height, maybe. As the camera panned, it seemed to be grabbed by something, and in jerky pictures and static, a hand with 6 fingers and 2 thumbs, one on each side of the hand. It was tipped with pads of highly textured skin and claws of 1 inch or more. The cable topside began to get yanked and pulled violently and slapped side to side as the winch snapped in its mounts and then fell to the drilling deck. The drilling crew rushed outside their ready room door, and to their horror, they watched a large heavy winch get pulled across the deck and down into the borehole. Mace took 5 steps towards the borehole and then turned to the group of his crew standing behind him on the deck. Boys, get your shit together. We are leaving now. Wait, has anyone seen Jared? Last time I see him, he was heading down to check the mud transfer pumps. But that was 25 minutes ago. Ah, fuck. Hank, tag and run. Come with me. Grab something that you know will hurt if you have to swing it and hit something. The rest of you, get your shit together and meet me back here at the ready room. And no one else gets off the deck. You have 10 minutes, 5 minutes ago. Now move. As Mace and his boys moved down the 3 stairwells to the mud storage tanks and mechanical deck located at ground level, they began to call out for Jared. Or they found the area where the mud transfer pumps are located, and there were signs of a struggle and some blood, and a greyish fluid on the ground, and both trails lead off to the south in the direction of the rock boulders. Oh, let's go find him. Hang on, we need some fucking weapons. Let's get to the security office and then we'll go looking for him. Okay, good deal. As the group heads back up the second stairwell, they hear a large volume of gunfire coming from the south in the direction of the boulder field. Then silence, and then a large amount of gunfire, and then several explosions. What the fuck? Damn, I don't like the sound of that music. Yeah, that can be good. Let's get to the security office. It might be worse than we think, boys. Mace and his boys move quickly to the security office, and they find it unlocked and the weapon racks, they're empty. What in the freaking... Ah, damn it. What the fuck are we gonna do now? I mean, really, what the fuck are we gonna do now? Ah, this is some fucked up shit now, man. Calm down. Woo. Okay, let's get back to the ready room. Mace orders. As Mace and the very scared group of roughnecks make their way back to the crew's ready room, they were moving across the rig's platform decking, they see something. Some kind of figure climbed up over the railing of the deck about 120 feet away from them. The boys with pipes and wrenches still in their hands. They rushed the figure, and as they were about to pound it, they realized it was Lee, the head of security, and his uniform was tattered, and he was bleeding. "Lee, what in the heck are you doing?" Lee was covered in blood and also the grey fluid. "Lee! Lee! Lee!" Mace shouts as Lee's gaze began to come back to some of his senses. "What happened? What did you see?" There's things out there. They killed my guys." "What are you doing out there?" After several heavy breaths, Lee responded. "We saw them. They grabbed Jared Baker on the video monitors, but by the time we got to him, they dragged him halfway to the boulder field. We chased him, and we started firing at him. And that's when several of them turned and began to attack us. Bullets have little effect. It's like they have some kind of armor. And then I saw them drag Jared up to one of those boulders, and it was like the face of the rock disappeared and they walked through, with Jared screaming and kicking. They walked through the rock and the rock became solid again. And we couldn't hear them anymore." "Man, you're not making any fucking sense." "What else did you see, Lee?" "They tore through 6 of my men, like they were paper." "What's this grey stuff?" "If you shoot him in the head, that's almost like a melon. It bursts and this grey shit flies out, like it's under pressure." "All right, boys, grab him. Let's get back to the ready room." As the group reached the ready room, they opened the door, and the rest of the rig crew reacted with agitated surprise at their arrival. "Boys, grab anything that you can use as a weapon, and I mean anything. John, where are the keys to the crawlers kept?" "The admin shack, all the way across the deck. It's over 250 feet away." "And how long would it take to get 2 crawlers up and ready to roll?" 25 minutes, assuming they have fuel." "And who else other than John knows how to drive a crawler?" "Kenny does." "Yeah, boss, I do." "Okay, I want 6 roughnecks for John and Kenny apiece. Now you guys are going to watch their backs while they get the crawlers up and going. The rest of you guys, we're going to get as many people off this site as we can find. Am I clear? We all understand?" "Yes, boss," everybody screamed. Mace reaches for the phone and dials the drill shack, and someone picks up the phone and utters in a whispery voice, "Help! Help! Help me!" Mace hangs up the phone. "All right, boys. I'm not going to promise you that we're all going to get out of this alive, but if we stick together and fight like hell, we might have a chance. Let's go." The group moves out of the ready room, and the group splits up and go into their respective assignments. Mace and the search group get to the drill shack, and the shack is in complete disarray. There is blood and body tissue all around the shack. Mace walks over to the ADACB, or Advanced Disaster and Communications Beacon, removes the cover and smashes the 2 buttons simultaneously. Nothing happens. He presses them again. "God damn it! Is there something working against us?" Boss, I don't think they were ever connected or hooked into the system. The rig was new and we had so little time that we just didn't get around to checking it. When I was looking at the panel, I didn't see a test circuit for it. I'm sorry, boss." Mace was thoroughly disgusted. "All right, let's go." Every shack that they searched was just as ransacked, like the others. Blood and tissue scattered about as well. After all the shacks were searched and cleared, Mace led his group down to where the crawlers were located. He could see that they had both crawlers up and running. As the rig crew was loading into the crawlers, one of the roughnecks noticed 5 or 6 figures crawling and climbing on the rig's drill tower, and they seemed to be searching for something, and he got several of the other roughnecks to look at them. Before too long, everyone was looking, as the unmistakable thunderous sound of rotor blades from a helicopter flew over in the night sky. It looked military, but it was hard to see. Then a spotlight came on and started shining on the drill tower. While it circled the drill tower, the rig crew could see what looked like a camera mounted under the helo. and someone hanging out at the side door talking into a headset. The helo hovered for just a couple of moments, and then the spotlight turned off and it flew away at high speed. "Okay, Kenny, roll us on out of here. Try and get us out to the other side of that rise. Let's get something in between us and the rig. Move, Kenny." We're not going to do much better than 12 or 15 miles per hour, boss. But at least we're moving. Yeah, you just do what you need to do in order to keep us moving." "Will do, boss." 5 minutes after the helo's departure, as the crawlers were barely 500 feet from the rig, the night sky was lit up with a bright orange flash, and the blast of a large explosion could be heard. And about 3 seconds later, as the shockwave from the blast overtook the crawlers and flipped the second crawler over on its side, killing about half of the occupants from the wave itself, and pushing the first crawler sideways into a small ditch, and everyone's eardrums were ruptured and bleeding. Mace tried to get a sense of what was happening as the second blast erupted overhead and the shockwave struck the rig and the crawlers. The rig toppled over and the fuel tanks under the platform ruptured as several thousand gallons of fuel began burning and the crawlers were shifted around. The first crawler was blown over on its side and Mace was thrown out of the crawler. As he rolled onto the ground, the shifting crawler rolled over onto his legs. Mace couldn't hear his bones snapping and cracking because of his eardrums being ruptured, but the sensation of the snapping, separating and grinding was an excruciating exercise in agony. Mace screamed in pain, but he couldn't even hear his own screams. Most of the rig crew were already dead or dying from the blast concussion, extreme heat burns, and their bodies were being pummeled by the flying debris. The tree trunks were ripped from the ground, and debris was flying in all directions. The scene was one of a fiery holocaust. The wind from the blast wave was like that thrust from a jet engine at full throttle. The atmosphere settled down. Mace was able to move some debris and tree limbs off of him with his arms. Hank the driller stumbled upon Mace and tried to render some sort of aid, but with a 9-ton crawler, not much could be done. Hank began crawling up on top of the crawler's side to free up the large pry bar and try to get some kind of leverage to get Mace's legs free. It was next to impossible. Mace kept trying to talk to him, but Hank's ears were completely blown out, and so was Mace's, as the last of the 3 GBU 43/B Massive Ordnance Air Blaster, or MOABs, were dragged by its stroke parachute out and off to the rear ramp of the C-130 cargo aircraft, and the cradle sled cleared the belly of the Moab. The bomb started its 45,000-foot freefall under GPS satellite guidance to its intended target. The seconds of silence that were the last that Mace and Hank would know on the planet were well peaceful, and while the mother of all bombs made its way to the 200-foot airburst altitude, Mace grabbed Hank's hand, and it was as if he knew the attack wasn't over, as the fuel air cloud expanded to encompass the crawlers, Mace and Hank. The detonation of the incendiary charge began a fuel-air combustion of highly explosive gases, particle vapor, and highly refined powdered aluminium, while the combustion of the vaporized gases consumed all of the available oxygen, and as it was sucked into the center of the detonation sphere, and then the sudden expansion of the shockwave's origin began its deadly rampage. The searing heat and massive overpressure made the area boil with turbulence and violent upheaval. This maelstrom was further enhanced by the blast wave's reflection of the surface of the ground. Mace's and Hank's bodies were shattered, and the flesh was ripped from their bones, and then the bones were pulverized by the shockwave's effects. The men really didn't know what hit them. All life had been extinguished within a 2,500-foot or more diameter sphere. The rumble and the roar of the detonation echoed and reverberated through the bottoms. The seismic stations at Stillwater, Norman, Pauls Valley, and Ada all began registering large shockwaves moving through the stratum of stone and alluvial deposits, and the alarms of fault activation began circling through the geology community, even at this late hour. News departments began receiving telephone and text messages of large explosions, and it was not long before the news wires were sounding off. We interrupt this program to bring you a special report. We're getting reports of massive explosions just south of Tulsa, about 35 miles southwest of Tulsa, just north of the town of IXL. Information is sketchy at this time, but there have been several reports of people missing and others that have been killed by the blast. We will bring you full details as they become available, and we will have complete coverage on the early news coming up in 2 hours. This has been a special report. "20 hours earlier. The night was a warm one. Jesse had been working the line for days on extraordinary little sleep. He was a tough country boy, and hard work wasn't new to him. He hoped that this job would last and he would get onto the rig crew as a rustabout or a worm. Yeah, it's the lowest of the low, but it's a start, and it's the best shot he has to get a better life. Jesse's home life growing up was less than ideal. Jesse is the youngest in his family. He has 2 older brothers. Each of the boys had a different father, and growing up with his mum was, well, a barfly. That's about the nicest thing he could say about her. She would try to bring men home, and sometimes they would try playing daddy, but it always went south somehow. Or they would get drunk, beat on his brothers and him, and when his brothers would run out to the trailer and stay with friends, Jesse just wanted to strike out and try to make a better life for himself. His elder brother Zach is already in county jail for drugs, and his middle brother Trey is headed down the same path. And Jesse always told his uncle, who did try to help the boys as much as he could, that he wasn't built for jail. He at least wanted to pick his own boyfriends, and his uncle and he would have a great laugh. And the side-by-side roared up into the small space between the boulders, and Jesse had been riding saddle in this thing for over 72 hours, and well, his ass was screaming for some relief. When he jumped out and looked for the butt wipe, he was pissed off that there was none to be found, and the last roll was taken by one of the roughnecks that he thought didn't like him. Jesse just decided to take a leak and do the squat later. He walked back over to the crevice and found the perfect spot, and so he unzipped and pulled out the old Howard and began the long-awaited relief. He put his left hand on the surface of the boulder, enjoying the time out of the saddle. And then the surface of the boulder seemed to change. It flashed, and then it had like arcs of electricity flashing from side to side. And then the arcs moved up and down. His left hand fell forward and was grabbed by a very strong grip, and soon he found himself face to face with a figure that was about 8 feet tall and thin, like some of the people he'd seen in a history class after World War II. But the face, it seemed to be thin and long with leathery scales, reddish-orange eyes and sharp, jagged teeth. The strength was powerful, and then he noticed a second one, and he grabbed his radio off his waist and put his hand about 6 inches away from it, and the case melted. Jesse screamed and grabbed his hunting knife off his right hip and jabbed it into the side of the one that had his left hand. The blade and the handle of the blade heated up quickly, and it burned in his hand seriously. He dropped his hunting knife, and then the figure pulled him into the transparent surface of the boulder, and then the boulder wall became solid again. Jesse was fighting with all of his might and almost got away, until the second one wrangled his right hand together with the left, and it seemed from out of a small hole on the wrist of the figure, a clear fluid shot from the opening and coated his wrists. It then seemed to expand and sealed his wrists together. Now he was in full panic mode, kicking and screaming. With both hands bound in front of him, he began picking up rocks off the floor of the room and throwing them at the figures. Now this must have angered them, because they rushed him and put him to the ground. He felt his ankles being bound by the same fluid as his wrists. Then the creatures began to drag Jesse by his feet, through the many corridors that carried him down several vertical shafts to an area that seemed to be for preparation of some kind. They laid him on a stone table and began to tear and cut his clothing from his body. He fought and squirmed, screamed and cursed, spitting in their faces. The larger of the two pulled the final stitch of clothing from his body, and he was now naked on a cold stone slab. As the creatures began to evaluate the physical form of Jesse's body, he began hurling insults and profanities of every kind. They grabbed him and flipped him onto his stomach, and Jesse's fear gripped him. he began to beg the creatures not to hurt him, as the hands went to places that no 19-year-old country boy should have to endure. One of the creatures went over to the shelf with containers on it. He opened one of the containers and took out something that was black and flat with protrusions around the side. And these protrusions looked sharp and were about an inch long. The object itself was about 6 inches in diameter. The creature brought it over to the table and carefully placed it onto the small of his back, just above his butt crack. And then the creature pushed it hard into his flesh, and the pain became almost immediately unbearable. He screamed, kicked, begged and pleaded. The protrusions began to grow and lengthen inside his flesh, and then began to go deeper into his body, as some of the protrusions began to wrap around his spinal cord, and as they started to twist up his back, under the skin, and wrap around the spinal cord and his upper back, the pain was nullified, and his body became limp. His breathing shallowed, and his coma became a fact in his young life, and Jesse's world went forever dark. The creatures washed his body, and then the larger one picked him up and carried him through several corridors. And when the corridor opened up into a large room, several basketball courts in size, with large troughs and many crosspipes, the creature walked up to the trough at the middle, and it had hundreds of human bodies in a fluid that covered most of the bodies, with just enough so that the mouth and the nose were exposed above the fluid. This was so the bodies could continue to breathe while the rest of the body was dissolved over a period of 17 months. The creature placed Jesse into the trough and used a special stand to keep his head above the pool. Within seconds, his dark tan skin turned white, and his eyes were turning milk white. Jesse was well on his way to being liquefied. The nutrient solution is the life's blood of the creatures, and the only way to sustain a breeding population globally. You see, there are several nutrient production sites around the world, and the solution is then pumped to all the other hives. These creatures are a subdued form of Draco, underground reptilian species that tend to dwell deep in the earth. But because of a necessity of having to have humans as food derivatives, they have to have certain spots across the planet in order to have access to the nutrient components. Only when they are in breeding mode do they consume meat. It is usually always fresh. They will drag their prey into the breeding chambers and feast upon them before the mating spawn begins. After the spawn, the females will consume large amounts of nutrient solution, while the males will consume fresh meat and sometimes the hermaphrodite drones to regain their strength, which are the keepers of the eggs and the live infants. There is no queen of the hive, just a warrior caste, breeder caste, worker or drone caste, and messenger caste. The castes are comprised of male and female. Specifically, the worker or drone caste can be about 3% male, or 2% female, or 95% hermaphrodite. Hives do go to war with each other, but it is rare. The last hive war was during the Great Plagues of our Middle Ages, and the next to the last war was during the rise of the Homo erectus. While Mace and his crew were ready in the crawlers for their trip out of this Dante's nightmare, and as they were within seconds of bearing witness to a fuel-air explosion firsthand, several of the captured workers from the drill rig were being processed for their nutrient baths. The shock waves from the first Moab reached the upper corridors of the hive. Some of the containment doors were destroyed, and this raised alarm bells with the warrior caste as they began to rally for a more extensive attack. The second Moab detonated, and the resulting shockwave travelled down the unprotected hive corridors and killed and/or maimed large numbers of the warrior caste and caused some of the corridors to collapse. As the panic ensued, the drones began to empty the egg chambers and were frantically moving the young to deeper chambers in the hive. The Draco response was ramping up and was just about to be released onto the surface. But with more of the surface doors open, this allowed the shockwave from the third Moab to run the corridors of the hive in a much more violent and devastating manner. Large numbers of the Draco were killed and mangled. Long reaches of the corridors were collapsed, and several nutrient solution production theatres were destroyed, This caused the Draco to abandon the upper hive and seal off the connecting corridors to the middle and lower chambers. Within hours of this devastating attack on the hive, work began on branching the hive connections to the surface. Their aim was for several areas that had been previously scouted, like Chandler Park in Tulsa and Turkey Mountain Recreational Area, also in Tulsa, parts of Illinois Scenic River in the Tahlequah area, and the Quartz Mountain area in western Oklahoma, as well as several others. The hive is a living entity and will always work extremely hard at its survival. 48 hours earlier, in the modified bunker at the US Army Ammunition Plant, McAlester, Oklahoma, at the southern end of the plant, the meeting room was crowded, and as the participants were finding their seats in a room, the room was called to attention, and General Tate walked into the room and called for everyone to sit down. Alright, let's have it. I'm pressed for time and there's a developing situation in the small town of Red Oak that I have been assigned to oversee. Captain Hill, if you please. Yes, sir. We have been monitoring a drilling operation that was actually ordered and paid for by the Department of the Interior. We are still a bit foggy as to why they are so heavily involved in the endeavor. However, we feel that this drill site is remarkably close to a Class C5 hive site. This could become problematic, as you are well aware of the issues we've had in the past. And what is your recommendation, Captain? Well, as you probably know, sir, when something disturbs a hive, they tend to react violently. There are many personnel on this location. We recommend a number of MOABs to be put on standby, just in case the situation escalates. And we may need to sanitize the area, and use a drilling accident as a cover story. And we can lay the blame on the victims of the blast. Good. It sounds like a solid plan. Go ahead and drop the orders. I will sign them before I leave for the forward base in Red Oak. Sir, there is one other thing. We have been getting reports from the same area of a Type 2 humanoid hairy acting in a very odd manner. Biologists are concerned that the subject in question might be infected with some kind of virus or possibly a bacterium. Well, find it, trap it, shoot it, kill it. Deal with it. It's not like we haven't done this before, Captain. Understood. But this is in close proximity to a populated area. Son, I have a situation going down in a populated area right now. And it's not going to get any more complicated than what the initiative is already dealing with. Find it and kill it. Yes, sir. Anything else? Not at this time. Captain Hill sits back in his chair as General Tate leaves the meeting room, and the officer next to the captain says jokingly, "Hard day of the office, honey," and smiles, and then gets up and walks out as Captain Hill says quietly, under his breath, "Fuck." A lone Oklahoma National Guard Hummer struggles in the early morning light to navigate the tangle of debris from the makeshift road scraped out by the drilling operation, venturing into the area. The 4 occupants of the vehicle stop and exit it, one of them being a major with the Oklahoma National Guard, another with the letters of the OEM stamped across his back, and the third one having the letters OCC. While the 3 of them are overlooking the toppled, mangled wreck of Rig 17, one of the men turns to the other and says, "This is going to be a cluster." As the emergency response ramps up to start the search and rescue operation, and the Oklahoma Corporation Commission investigators begin to lock down the site and start sifting of the evidence to find cause, the head of the Oklahoma Emergency Management Office and the OCC lead investigator gets into a turf war over jurisdiction. The clash escalates up to the chain of the governor's office, who has to quash the conflict, but before he could, the Muskogee Creek Indian tribe steps in, because it happened on tribal land. They file a court case to have the incident investigated by the nation. This sets off a 3-way power struggle that now the governor's office cannot interfere with because of its ages-old treaties with the federal government. So, in order for this to get resolved, it's going through the tribal court system, then the federal courts will have to rule on the final outcome. The legal calisthenics were heavily in play as the Office of Emergency Management continued with the search and rescue, even as the heavy thunderstorm complex bombarded the area for 4 3.5 days. The OEM was only able to conduct search and rescue operations. If there was evidence in plain sight, they were not allowed to collect it, as the rains washed and covered up with mud lots of the evidence that would have been crucial to the investigation. After an exhaustive search and rescue operation, the OEM concluded that all rig crew and support personnel that was on site were killed and/or disintegrated by the blasts, and all 169 souls were now listed as dead or missing. The Oklahoma National Guard had 9 liaison personnel on hand helping with the search and rescue operation, and were closely monitoring any evidence located in the area and placed flags of different colours at the site. In the Oklahoma Office of Emergency Management, after action review some 6 months later, it is revealed that the Oklahoma National Guard had no representatives on site and that there was no record of the names of the liaisons in the incident journal. To this day, no one knows who these personnel were or where they came from. The Oklahoma Bureau of Investigations concluded that there was insufficient evidence to identify or prosecute any of the bogus Oklahoma National Guard personnel. The search operations were closing down, but the legal wrangling kept investigators off the site for 3.5 months. The flag set out by the bogus Oklahoma National Guard liaisons were gradually disappearing into the overnight hours during that time period. Legal issues were finally worked out, and the investigators concluded that it was by error of the rig crew in the drill shack, and that the lead driller, Hank Jefferson, ignored the warnings from the big control center about the volatile gases being encountered in the borehole, which precipitated a blast and subsequent destruction of the rig and loss of life on the site. The investigations team concluded it was operator error and recommended that the company be held partially responsible for the accident by hiring an incompetent lead driller. The fact that the volatile gases were no longer emanating from the borehole and there was no need to cap the well because there was no venting were generally ignored by the investigators, who were more interested in assigning blame. Peligas Exploration Company was quietly shut down after the wrongful death lawsuits were settled, and none of them made it to trial. Any assets that were still in the company were either sold or transferred to the other subsidiary exploration companies of its parent Magna Fora Petroleum Corporation. In the annual report of the corporation, any reference to the Hive Core No. 1 project was deleted from the text of the report. However, even after the losses produced from the wrongful death lawsuits and the loss of an awfully expensive drill rig, the company posted record earnings attributing a good fortune to well-placed government contracts that were fulfilled by the company during the reporting period. Is it our fear of the unknown so commanding that we cannot comprehend that there are things that we do not understand that cause us to blindly allow for the dismissal of the evidence of their existence? Or do we choose to allow our perceived superiority to supersede their dominance? While there were no survivors of the rig crew or the support staff of the exploration team, some things still remain in the mix of the incident. Jesse's disappearance was moved to a missing person status, and while it is generally accepted that most, if not all personnel were casualties of the accident, some of the bodies were never recovered. It was determined that they were probably incinerated in a rig blast, but they are listed as missing and presumed dead. Lance Thorogood, Neil's professional acquaintance, had an unfortunate accident in London's underground a few weeks after the blast that claimed Neil's life. Lance was standing on the platform in a crowd of commuters on the morning walk and somehow fell into the path of an approaching train. The accident, while tragic, made extraordinarily little news splash in the media cycle. Now, Mr. Thorogood was very good at his job. He placed all of his work into digital archives of the British Petroleum Data Network, of which all of the data. However, he was also a realist, and he also deposited the data into a spidery dark web vault locations across the globe. Yes, the access to this data is limited, but it is being evaluated by very skilled people in their respective fields, off the books, so to speak. We may yet see the analysis of the rock strata for the epoch's time. people still vanish into the voids of the bottoms of the Deep Fork River, a fact that is as old as time itself. And some of those facts are ancient, very ancient. On the next episode of the Disappearances of the Deep Fork River Bottoms, when you have that piece of pecan pie on the summer's day at your favourite picnic spot, you'll have to wonder, did it come from a peaceful grove of sweeping majestic trees in a serene grove? Or did it come from a grove of terror and a vile extraterrestrial existence? A nut cracked by the hand of a non-earthly entity. Well, let's face it, sometimes aliens are just hungry. Until next time, when you walk up next to that beautiful boulder and with the rich colours and textures of the epochs of time that took to make it, is it truly solid, or is there something lurking, looking back at you, something from within the rock itself, and with its hand just inches away from your own, and perhaps just waiting for the right moment to open the doors that it knows, while pulling you down the stone hallways? They will prepare you like the attendants in a spa, and your leisurely time at the nutrient baths can begin. Well, I'm off to the gym and a protein shake. Ta-ta. Stay safe. Wow, 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 wow. 100% another one. Wow. What an absolutely intriguing, skin-crawling and refreshing addition to this incredible series. Thank you ever so much, Ed, for your kind support and constant dedication. It really is so good to have you back in the swing of things, and I just hope I do your writing justice. Well, guys and girls, we told you it would be pretty special. Of course though, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help with the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag Team Fear and DMT's Cryptid Crew. If you're an aspiring writer or just want to have a crack at things like myself, please get in touch with me at the usual email as on screen, which is dmtforestofear@gmail.com. I really look forward to hearing from you. I hope everybody's had a lovely week at work or school or studying, whether you're rocking the skeleton crew night shift or the long haul on the roads. Whatever it is that you do, I hope you're happy and you're trying to keep fit and focused as possible. But above all, guys, remember, be safe, not sorry.